In this video, I'm going to acquaint you with do files. And so briefly what do files are you can think of them as a program, like where you can save all the commands that you're working with, or just a space sometimes to work in to get get commands written the way that you want them to work. So to open a do file, you'll see that I've got Stata open right here. And so I'll go up to this little button right here, which if I hover over it, we'll just say new do file editor. And so that's going to open up something that looks like this. So it looks like a WordPad or like a word processor or something like that. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to split my screen. And resize things a little bit. Apologies for the little delay here. And so what we can do now is we can type commands over here in the do file, just like we could down here in the command window. And so to start off, I'm just going to paste some code in here that I had already written. So I'm going to start by set a working directory. Then I'm going to put some code in here to import data. So this is going to import a CSV file. And then what will happen is you can just run the commands here, but instead of having to type everything out, you can just have it all run at once, or having to copy and paste it into the command window. So what you can do is you can highlight it first, and you can highlight just the section, just the code that you want to run, just like those commands. Or if you just want to run the whole thing, you can just leave the cursor up here and just click start. And to run a do file, you can do that either two ways. One is you can just click this little button here that says execute, and then just ran everything. And then you'll see the data show up in just a second here. There we go. Or the other thing that you can do is you can highlight, say I'm just going to highlight this to import the same data again, and then I'm on a Windows machine, so if I just hit Control and D at the same time, it's going to run that highlighted code. If you're on a Mac, it's Command D. And then just makes it a little bit easier, so you can just do everything from the keyboard. And so for something as simple as the code that I've got here, you'll see it's not like this is saving an awful lot of time. But if you start to do a lot of things like renaming variables, so let's say I want to rename this variable right here, would just do that. Then I can highlight it, run it, and there we go. It's renamed that. So where do files become really handy are whenever data needs to be, there's a lot of data kind of management commands that need to be run before you're ready for analysis. So if a lot of variables need to be renamed or anything like that, you can just include all of that in a do file and then just run it from the beginning, and it'll do all of that processing so that your data is ready for analysis in case you need to, pause for a while, close everything down, and then come back to it later. So it's really helpful for that. It's also really helpful because you can copy and paste things, and then you can just make some small changes here. So as opposed to having to retype everything out like you would really if you were typing everything into the command panel, or just pulling things in from the history panel, you can just copy and paste within a do file and bring everything in. Make all of those changes that way. If you're going to run a bunch of analyses, like run a bunch of tables or something like that, put it into a do file, and you just have to run it. So it's convenient for an individual user, because then it becomes really easy to just not have to redo a bunch of steps every time you get into Stata or work on a particular file. Another reason why it's nice is because you can share a do file with collaborators, and that lets your collaborators see everything that's going on. Everything that you're doing in terms of manipulating the data, or what types of analyses that you're running, which makes it really helpful another way that it can be helpful to troubleshoot, or for someone else to just look at what you're doing and to be able to replicate it later on. So it's really handy for all of those reasons. And then if you want to save this, you just click the little save icon, and then it brings up the navigation window here, so you can go in and save it as whatever. So I'm just going to name this example do file. And then when I go into that particular folder, we'll see that there's a do file right here that you can open, and it's going to have all of these commands that we just were looking at here. So that's the basics about how to open a do file, save a do file, and generally what you can do with it. Here are a few more things that can be helpful. So oftentimes you want to, you might want to annotate your code or your commands. Usually when we're working with a do file, we would say just this is like our code that we're working with. And so to annotate it, you can do a few things. So if you just type an asterisk, now you can type whatever notes to yourself or another user. And so this could be what you're trying to do with this next set of code, or something like that. So that can be really handy if you need to. And what this means is that Stata, when you try to execute this, Stata won't recognize this as a command and try to use it, because if Stata tried to read this as a command, it would give you an error and it wouldn't run. But using the asterisk here tells it that you are telling Stata just ignore this line. This is just text for the user. Another thing you can do is if you use slash and then star, you can turn everything green or green it out. Sometimes people will call it. What that means is Stata won't run a whole block of text or a whole block of commands. So for instance, you'll see here. So if let's say we didn't want Stata to run either of these commands right here, then down here we just type star or asterisk and then slash, and then this is all greened out, but it would run this right here. That can be handy when you are building analyses, trying to do a lot of stuff, and you want to run some pieces of code and not others. So those are two handy tricks for working with do files in Stata.